Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Thrive Alive podcast. I've got another interesting guest this week. I'm sitting with Fernando. I met Fernando at level 2 breathless training and really kicked it off down there at the mountains on the retreat. And when I saw him, he was built like a brick shit house. His legs were like the size of my waistline, and shared a really cool breathwork story, and just his journey was really inspiring. So I thought I'd get him on the podcast to share what he's been up to and what he's doing and providing for the world. So Fernando, welcome.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
That's all good, my brother. I just saw that you finished a 6-month meat fast.
Yes, yes, indeed.
What was the intention behind that?
That was quite a journey. Something I wouldn't normally do. I love my meat, love my food. Coming from a bodybuilding background as well. I recently employed a health coach to work with myself just to get my health on another level, godlike as we like to call it. And eliminating the meat for a period of time was something that I needed to really reset my gut, my health, my bacteria, my parasites, which has been a great success. And finally ended it only a few days ago. It was great. It was great to go through that process and great to end the fast. And I'm really blessed for the journey that I went on the last 6 months.
So before you were doing it, were you having gut issues?
I've had a lot of gut issues since the bodybuilding days. Bodybuilding can do that, and we can dive into the complexities of bodybuilding. But there's probably been the last 6-7 years where my stomach hasn't been right. I bloat very, very easily, extremely easily. I'll get gassy quite a bit, and I can get an upset stomach and have stomach pains throughout the day. And it's something that I knew I needed to address. I just haven't had the time, or so I thought. But it's really just the adjustments that I needed to make and really look at health and diet as a holistic point of view rather than just a macro, protein, fats and carbs as we typically do.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've had a few guests on talking about eating organic and the importance of voting with your dollar and just cutting out the shit. You go to the grocery and it's just like a mountain of frankenfoods, I like to call them. Just designed foods. It's not natural, in packets, in plastics, and all that stuff's like leaching out into our guts. And then you mentioned the bodybuilding. Were you drinking like protein shakes and stuff like that?
All the time. Protein shakes, protein bars, and you look at the back of the packets and you can't read half the ingredients, and you just realize that it's not. It's good to get in condition and get on a stage, but once it serves that purpose, it can actually do more harm than good. So it's a lot of hard truths that I needed to understand, and this is after an exercise physiology degree, mind you, and being in the bodybuilding game for a long time. There's so many levels of health, like there are levels with anything. There's always growth opportunities, and I've learned a lot in the last 6 to 8 months about my body, but health in general.
Yeah. So what was it like eating that first bit of meat again?
It was really good. I was a bit scared to eat it. It was deer, some wild caught deer, and I tried it once before, maybe a few years ago, and I thought it was very gamey. If anyone that's listening has had a kangaroo before, it can kind of taste like that. It's very different taste, acquired taste, and so I was a bit concerned. I wasn't going to lie, but I put it in a beautiful ragu. I made a really nice pasta dish. I had a friend over, put some really good fresh herbs and spices in there, a beautiful organic sauce that I made, and it went down so well, and it felt like my body was just absorbing the nutrition. It had been that long, and you get, over time, you become in tune with your body, with what your body needs, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise, whatever it may be. And I knew when I was consuming this meal that, I was ready, like my body was ready to take it up, and no gut issues, no problems with the gut after having it, where normally I would have quite a few issues eating a meat meal at night.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. I eat so much meat, it's crazy. And like you said, listening to your body, it almost becomes like a spiritual relationship with your emotional, mental and physical, like listening to the little, like what's your body telling you? I like what Paul Chek said. Are you familiar with Paul Chek?
No, I'm not.
He always calls it the pain teacher.
Yeah.
So it's like when a little bit of pain or something's showing up in your body, you're listening to it because it's telling you something. And it's like when you say if I have a little bit of cheese, almost straight away in the first 15 minutes, I'll sneeze maybe once or twice. And then if I keep eating it over the next like 24 hours, my nose is like dripping, my eyes get itchy, I'll be sneezing and get real mucusy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done the parasite. Did you do herbal parasite cleanses or just doing the fast?
No, both herbal and the fast.
Yeah.
So worked through quite a bit.
Yeah.
A bit of cleanse.
I just got my just previous guest was all talking about the parasite and fungal cleanses.
Yeah.
And we're talking about doing the foods to eliminate them, like to starve them out, and then we didn't even get to touch on the herbal cleanses. So what herbs did you take to flush them out?
Canine pepper is really effective in terms of boosting everything in your immune system. We've got star and yeast that we used. We used a lot of cinnamon and do organic teas with some cinnamon. Lemon and lime is absolutely amazing. Also aloe vera, fresh aloe vera in the morning is a routine that I went by quite often. And then a nice chamomile at night. So basic herbs and spices like that. Then throwing in things like cumin or paprika, turmeric with the meals. So making sure that that's, ongoing. And what was really interesting in my learning experience is different fruits and vegetables that can increase your histamine and up inflammation. So for example, I would eat a lot of eggplant. Eggplant was healthy. I liked it. I'd get organic eggplant. Eggplant is one of the foods that would raise histamine levels. So I was told by my coach, if you want to, try and improve your inflammation of the gut and heal the gut, eggplant is something that you cannot have at this point in time. So it wasn't just the flushing and the fast. There was also learning about what foods actually aggravated me. And it's not as simple as I just eliminate fast foods and eliminate burgers and pies and ice cream. There's a lot more to it, and you got to learn what foods work for your body, and everyone is different. So it was again, holistic approach. We love that buzzword, but it worked for me. And there's many different approaches that would work for many people, as I'm sure you would be aware.
Well, the histamines set me off, like I said, with the inflammation in the milk, the dairy and stuff. But then, I heard all these good things about sauerkrauts and fermented foods, but then they're also full of histamines as well. So if I have too many of them, same thing sets me off.
Yep.
But I found just like a little pinch with a couple of meals a day, then that is my go-to. I feel good off that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And how long have you been eating mainly meat for?
It's not mainly meat. Like I do eat like fruits and like pumpkins and vegetables and stuff like that. But I think it's like coming up 3 years now.
Yeah.
So I did the Paul Chek's book, which is How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy. So what it does is it dials in on what's right for your body. He calls it the no diet. So it's like you fill out questionnaires, and it puts you in a category of a polar type or an equatorial type. And what that basically means is, so if your ancestors are from, say, closer to the poles where the ground freezes over in winter, there's going to be more meat. Whereas if you're closer to the equator, say like Fiji or something, you're going to be eating a lot of fruits, a lot of fish, stuff like that. So like you think of someone's intestines from those two regions, one person's going to be really short and then the other person's going to be really long. And then there's also a variable type, because you might have a dad from north and a mum from in the middle of like the equator, and then they've popped out you and you've got a bit of both. So that's where the variable type. So it's all about testing and like the pain teacher, listening to your body, listening to what it needs. And then I've done the test like 3 times. I thought I was polar type, but then I had to dial it back, and I'm somewhere in between, more a bit polar but more variable. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'll have to get you on to Paul Chek, man. Everyone I put him onto, I love. I try not to like bang it down people's throat, but every time someone keeps coming back with the same injury or the same problem, I'm like, you should maybe go check out Paul Chek.
It's when you find someone that you like, it's really hard not to sort of brag about them or go, hey, look, get onto this person. You don't want to force people in that aspect, but it definitely sounds interesting. I'd be more than keen to have a look.
Yeah, because he started off like as a physiotherapist, then got into the nutrition. Weston A. Price, he's like all about that, which was what we learned in Breathless Level 1. And then more recently, in the past 10-15 years, he's been really diving into like the spiritual work with plant medicines and meditation and Tai Chi and stuff like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. What would you like to know?
Yeah, so you used to compete?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So what drove you, what got you into that? Like, what was the interest there?
Yeah, it comes from a bit of a backstory. I used to play football, AFL football, and you can't see my height on this podcast, but I'm 163 centimeters, so it's like 5'6". I'm quite small. I was a good footballer back in my teens, and I was trying to make the big time, as most young males will do when they play sport. And it was at the last moment just before the draft where they make a few cuts, and I got cut from the squad. And the coach directly told me, his name was Butch, his nickname, so I won't give too much away of who he is, but he directly came up to me and gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, you're too small, you're not going to cut it. And that cut me real deep. And at the time I was pretty much matured, like I was 16, 17 years old. I know, you potentially could grow more, but my family are all short. I knew I wasn't going to get much taller. And I had quite a small frame. I used to be a runner, so I would run for kilometres and kilometres on end. So think of a 163 centimetre teenager that just runs all skin and bone. And I took that comment to heart, to be honest. But so I remember coming home from the training session, because I didn't drive, I had to catch a bus. And at the bus stop, I thought to myself, do you know what? I can't grow taller, but I can grow wider. And that's when I started lifting weights. And I took that physique, which I would have been about 60 kilos at the time, all the way to 105 kilos of pure mass. I did a lot in that time. I won major national competitions at the age of 20 and 21. I was crowned ICN, which is the I Compete Natural competitions. They're very well known in Australia.
And that means without steroids?
Without steroids, yeah. That's a drug testing comp. So I won the under 21s national championship for that. I won a lot of other divisions, and that was in 2017. And then I decided to take my bodybuilding to the next level. And to do that, I was in a bit of a rock and a hard place, because I knew I had the talent. I'd won all the natural comps, and the next step is the big time. But in the big time, there is steroid use. And look, not everyone does take steroids there. I don't want to say that everyone does, but it is very, very difficult to get to the top of bodybuilding without taking it. So I used steroids for 2 years, between 2018 and 2019, and that's when a lot of growth came, and I was walking around with literally boulders as shoulders, and I changed as a person for good and for worse, and it was quite an experience. So yeah, I've done it all in terms of bodybuilding, and it's a big part of my life. But obviously I'm a little bit different now in terms of the way I train and the way I approach day to day.
Yeah, so were you doing, because I know you do jiu-jitsu as well, were you doing that at the same time, or was...
No, so the bodybuilding filled a void in my life. I did karate from the age of 4 to probably that 16, 17. And then when I stopped footy and karate, I went into bodybuilding. And then when I finished bodybuilding, I started jiu-jitsu. So jiu-jitsu's been the last 4 to 5 years. And it's been a journey in itself. For those that do jiu-jitsu, they know the challenges and what comes with it. But being a 105 kilo bodybuilder at 163 centimeters, I wasn't flexible on the mats. I would tap out easy because people would shoulder lock me quite easily, and I just didn't have the range of motion. And I was getting quite injured because my ligaments were too stiff, too rigid. And a lot of lifts as well were very one-dimensional. So I did powerlifting for a point of time before jiu-jitsu, and with that, you do your squat, bench, deadlift, you're holding isometrically a lot of the time, you're bracing with your breath, whereas in jiu-jitsu, you got to have flow, you got to have rhythm, so it was very different the way my body had to move. So that's where I decided to make the change, get into more Pilates and yoga, do jiu-jitsu, do more breath work, and I've gradually dropped the weight in a very healthy way. A lot more mobile now, and now the challenge is trying to keep that power to weight ratio in terms of strength and being able to perform optimally with both strength, power, endurance, fitness, flexibility.
I remember seeing you and Jean wrestle it out down the mountains, and it almost looks like a dance. Like, it's so cool to watch, hey?
Yeah, that was special. So Jean at the time was a blue belt. I was just about to get my blue belt. That was a few years ago now, so I believe he's gone on to purple, and I've gone up obviously a level. And that was a beautiful experience to do that near the water. It was a lovely day on the grass, and it does become like an art. It becomes quite meditative. And for those that don't know what jiu-jitsu is, it's a game of chess. It's human chess, but in movement, in rhythm, in combat sport, which is really interesting. And a technique that I actually like to do at times is put on a blindfold or just simply close my eyes and roll with the person. Yes, vision is important, but when you get into those flow states, it's quite a beautiful sport, and I'm very grateful that I've stumbled across it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I used to do karate as a kid. Did a session with Gene, and I fell back, and his knee came ramming into my chest, and it took me 2 or 3 months to recover. Yeah, and me, I haven't got time for injuries, especially being a new dad. I was thinking about doing jiu-jitsu, and that kind of just turned me off. But I know it's not all like that. It's probably just an accident. But yeah, I should definitely get into it. Hey.
Yeah, typically it's interesting. So in jiu-jitsu there's 5 levels, and then beyond black belt there's multiple levels. But yeah, essentially it's white, blue, purple, brown, black. That's the way it goes. And in terms of injuries, most injuries happen to the white belts. You would think that at a higher level, perhaps maybe they're rolling harder, they're fighting harder, there's more technique. The more technique there is, the more control there is. So a lot of the injuries will happen to people that are on the mats for the first few weeks, or like myself, I didn't have the range of motion or flexibility, because your body starts to move in different ways under force as well. So someone might land in a certain position that your body's not used to, and you will come up second best. That is unfortunately the growing pains. It can be limited, and if you roll with experienced training partners, they can sort of guide you. But yes, it's not uncommon for that to happen.
So what facility are you training at? You're down in Melbourne?
I'm down in Melbourne, yeah. So I train at Limitless MMA, which is north of Melbourne. It's probably about 20 minutes past Melbourne Airport for those that are in Melbourne. It's a beautiful gym. Funny story there, my sensei, my coach, I signed up to the gym 3-4 years ago, started training, and then we put 2 and 2 together that he lived 4 houses down from me. I'd never come across him before. He lived on my street, and it's like, oh my God, he's a neighbour. So shout out to Troy. He's an amazing coach. He's a beautiful man. Him and Megan, his wife, who run the place, they've been second family to me. It's been quite a journey with them. Go through the highs and lows as we all do, but beautiful place.
Yeah, that's sick, man. Yeah, I actually got Gene coming on the podcast next. He's the next guest. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, we'll talk a bit about you as well, rolling around on the mats.
Say hello to him for me.
Yeah, I will do. Gene's a legend, man. He's I love the way he talks about coherence breathing. The way he explains getting your heart rate in coherence with your breath.
Yeah.
But then, have you ever heard about, say, if you might want to try this with your partner. So if you put one of your heads on the chest and listen to the heart, and don't even do breath work, you just breathe together, and it's almost like a pendulum. If you get 2 different pendulums and bring them in the same room, they end up in sync with each other, even if they were out of time. Same thing with the heart. So eventually, after about 5 minutes, both your hearts will come in sync with each other just naturally.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's crazy, hey?
Crazy how the human body can work.
It almost reminds me of the dominant female in the house. All the other women in the house, period, will link up with the dominant female.
Yes, yeah.
Because every time Kira goes down, she must be the alpha mama down in her parents' house. Because every time she goes down there, they all get their period.
It all links.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very crazy. Yeah. Just to go back a step, you mentioned coherent breathing with Gene, who does jiu-jitsu, and there's a really important point in that. A lot of my success so far in jiu-jitsu has come from the breath work. When at times you're found in very uncomfortable positions. Someone can be on top of you, someone can be trying to apply a choke on you. And during these times, it's not uncommon for even the most experienced people to start panicking. You've got someone trying to do a rear naked choke and they're about to tap you out, or you might be put to sleep. And the only chance you have of survival in those moments is a very slim chance, but you need to stay composed and you need to breathe calmly through it. A lot of people do tend to gas themselves when they're underneath it. When you've got someone that's heavy on top of you and trying to apply submission, it is quite taxing. So a lot of the times when I've been in uncomfortable positions, particularly when I was a white belt, when I started off, what held me through was my breath. Because if I didn't breathe coherently, if I didn't take longer exhalation versus inhalation when getting strangled, then I would have tapped, I would have panicked, or I would have lost oxygen underneath. And a lot of the times I've been able to gas my opponents, not because I'm fitter, but because I'm able to control my breath at a state when you're both in that fight or flight response, when you're on the mats and it's a go, go, go. So what Gene said is 100% correct. And anyone that has either done breathwork or does jiu-jitsu would understand that the two come hand in hand. And it's really beautiful. Troy, he's been getting a few breathwork coaches and to help train some of the athletes, and I've been talking with Troy as well from our background, and it's amazing how it all links up in any facet of life.
Yeah, I've been talking to a few of the boxers in the gym that I go to in the sauna, and we're talking about breathwork, and a lot of them never even heard of it. So I've been helping a few of them out with nasal breathing, just doing the breathing squats on the exhaled breath hold.
Yeah.
Just building that CO2 tolerance. Again, because it's like an upper hand against, especially in combat sports. Like if you've got the breath and the other component doesn't, then you've got the upper hand. Where you can probably last a little bit longer, like you said, outgas them.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Very important.
Talking about breathwork, let's go. We'll save your breathwork story for the end because it's a bloody nail biter. I remember when you told it to us, it was like a thriller. I pictured the whole thing in my head, but yeah, we'll save it till the end. Perfect. But let's go into the breathwork now. Speaking about Gene and the breathless expeditions, because when I met you, you were already down the mountains for a week prior. I came for level 2 training. You were already there doing your level 1, and then we linked up, did level 2, and then was it 5 or a few days later you went and sat with ayahuasca for a few days. So that complete month for you just must have been insane. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Correct. That month sparked a change in myself for the greater good, I would say. And not going off topic, I see quite a few people in my network. I see some psychic mediums. I've got some really good mentors. I've got just a beautiful circle of people, and they have noted to me without me asking that the last 2 years has been a big change and a big shift spiritually. And it's been kind of like a cleansing of the soul. And Breathless, the first instructor course, was a part of that. So yeah, in 2022 is when I really started diving into what is breath work, what is meditation. I was someone that can't sit still. We used to go to, my fiance and I, to hot Pilates or yoga, and we'd have to lie in Savasana, or and I would just be like, I can't do this. And she would be like, what do you mean you can't do that? I'm like, I can't lie still. I can't just sit here and close my eyes. And I was someone that always struggled. And people that get into breath work, there's a good portion that do struggle with lying still or just meditating in general. It's hard. It's a very difficult process. So I decided to go down to the mountains and do my instructor 1 with Breathless. At that time, I hadn't decided to do level 2. I didn't even know it was on, but I had booked in ayahuasca as well. So it was going to be Breathless, integration, ayahuasca, integration. So I was going to take the time. But for those that do know me, and for those that don't, I love to do things all out. So if I decide to do something, I will go in and play it all out 100%, and then sort of walk away and then do the next thing. So when we were there, Johannes, who's the leader at Breathless, he mentioned that there was an Instructor 2 course, and it's a follow-on from this one. And then he dropped it and goes, well, it's 4 days after. And I'm like, and I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, can I make it? Do I make it back in ayahuasca? And it happened to be a perfect fit. So I said, yeah, why not? Let's go in. I was really enjoying the Instructor 1 at the time. Instructor 2 is a level above that, where you go deeper into the more breath practice and the flow of running, your own event or ceremony or whatever you'd like to do. And it was beautiful. And the people that I met, including yourself, were amazing. I'm in Sydney at the moment because I met my celebrant who was on the level 1. Tonight I'm having dinner with another Breathless person. So it's been an absolute incredible journey. I've been honoured to be a part of it. I've gone back multiple times as a facilitator too. And yeah, that week with Breathless, 2 weeks really, was amazing. Ayahuasca was incredible as well. And I really learnt about who I wanted to be as a person. I'm not going to say that it transformed me there and then on the spot, but it started putting seeds into my thought process of, okay, this is where I'm heading, and yes, this feels good, I'm aligned with this work, this is where I want to go. And it gave me a new sense of purpose, which I think is really important. And I'm sure you would have found the same, or along the same lines. And it's a beautiful way to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've mentioned on this podcast many times, it absolutely changed my life. Like doing the my guest one, episode number 1, with Jackson Merritt, like we did a 90-day winter challenge of coming up to an ocean pool in the middle of winter and jumping in the water at 6 a.m. and doing breathwork beforehand. And I made 88 days out of 90, and that was just complete transformation. And it was during lockdowns as well, so it was like that was the only connection that we sort of had, and it just really held me together, and held the community together as well. It was just so inspiring. And since then, that's what drove me down to Breathless, and taking the breath back home as well into your life, like you said, integrating it. Like before I go in, when I'm upregulated from work or driving or coming home, I go out to the garden, I do a little bit of coherent breathing before I enter the house. So I'm like, change my energy. I've like shaken off that work energy, and then I've come in as me, grounded before I come into the house. And and then like I like to do extended exhales before I go to bed. That really calms me down. You familiar with that one?
Yeah, very good for down regulating, and particularly before bed.
But what I've found, it's actually for someone that struggles with breathing, it can actually raise their heart rate.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was trying to do it with one of my workmates, and we had to go back to doing the coherent, just the 5 in and 5 out, because his heart rate was just going up too much. So we're trying to build. He can't do the box breathing either, because the breath holds, his heart rate goes up again. So we do the triangle breath, where there's the breath hold on the inhale, but there's no breath hold on the exhale. And we're trying to build up so we can do the box breathing, and just build that tolerance to the CO2, because it is stressful. That's what it is. It's making your heart rate go up.
Build that base. Yeah. You mentioned the cold exposure. I go to fear. Talk about fear for a second. I have feared putting my head underwater. So people fear sharks, people fear spiders, heights. For me, it was always putting my head underwater. I would swim freestyle with my head above water. And Johannes's partner, Lou, who I met on the Breathless camp, she's a free diver, and there's a lot of people that do Breathless that do free diving, and obviously the breath is a really important point in free diving. And I got intrigued. I haven't been free diving yet because the ocean still does scare me. However, I started going to my local pool, and I started building up my breath and then doing breath holds underwater. And for me, that was a massive step outside my comfort zone. For someone that wouldn't even, dip their head underwater. And what I started was building that CO2 tolerance, but then using my performance with my training and seeing how long I could hold my breath, but how I could perform under fatigue. And then we have many different tests, as you know, with Breathless, that we do daily check-ins in the morning. And when I started at level 1, I was shocking. I would go and try and hold my breath, and I couldn't last more than 10 seconds. You'd go to hold your breath and you'd gasp, and your whole system's out of whack. And when you look at all the different things that can go wrong in your day, whether it's a blocked nose, whether tired, lack of energy, yawning, all these correlations that would come up, and you'd be like, oh wow, it's related to the breath, as we learnt. And over time, when I began to work on the breath and do daily check-ins from everything that we learnt at Breathless, and implement techniques like you said, the triangle breath, the box breath, extended exhales, inhales, things like that, and then practice on the breath holds, all of a sudden my holds got longer and longer and longer, and all those issues that I was facing in everyday life, they gradually disappeared. And that started as well with the mouth tape. It's a popular practice now to tape your mouth when you sleep. I think I did that for about 6 months, and I haven't felt the need to do it since. I wear an Oura ring. You don't have to sort of get an Oura ring, but I do to check every now and again, and I've found that my sleeping patterns are so much better, and my partner tells me I snore less as well. So it's really about getting into a good state, and then just maintenance. You don't have to, kill yourself over, can I have to work on my breath for 20, 30 minutes every day? It's not like that. It's you fix your breath and it'll stay fixed as long as you're, living with your breath, which is really important because we breathe every day, but sometimes it just goes unnoticed. We forget that we do it.
Yeah, I think that's why Johannes calls it retraining the breath. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so how did you find like the more trauma release sort of exercises like in level 2?
Yeah, that was a different dynamic, wasn't it? It's a very, very good insight into where the breath can take you, but as a facilitator, you can see where people have also gone through, and that is a really special thing to hold space for. With the trauma breath, we did a lot of superventilation, and there was many different techniques that we did. And I found that when we looked at the breath, it was so intricate, but so simple at the same time. We were always told that don't stop breathing for facilitators. That's what we help people through, because we get to that point, that climax where we go, okay, we want to stop. It's that resistance. We call it the point of resistance. And when someone goes through that, it's getting to that next level. It's that breakthrough. So there's a lot of, as we know, there can be trauma that's held in the body tissues. There can be generational trauma. There can be a lot of different things that goes on with an individual up until that point when they do the breathwork session, or up until that present day in their life. So learning how to facilitate that, but how to hold space with that, even simple things with how to touch, what to say, what not to say. It's a very delicate area, and when you're going into that, you're not just working with a breathwork session. Someone rocks up on a morning, does breathwork, great, what a good day, I've got to go ahead. You're dealing with years and years, potentially, of built up frustrations, anger, emotion, whatever it may be. So learning that in level 2 was definitely a step up from level 1. Level 1 had amazing content, and we learned about the breath and the techniques, like you said, and then level 2 was really diving deep into that trauma space. So how did you find it?
Yeah, well, I've found it's more come up recently. A lot of I actually had a PTSD flashback just literally a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still trying to deal with that. And yeah, just piecing together like my whole life, like the past few years of how the journey that I've been on. And it's like, of course, this memory came now that I have all these tools to help myself regulate, to help myself integrate, to be a better person and not let that leak out onto other people like it can, such as like anger or frustration. Just not being the best service to yourself. And if you're being service to yourself, then you can be in service to others, you know what I mean? And so I definitely had emotional releases during level 2 training, but I never really got like a story there. I never really got the memory. I never really got nothing really came up. It was just more so emotion coming out and releasing. And sort of now the memories are starting to come back of maybe what I was shedding. Maybe because I've done so much work, it's like finally time to come out, you know what I mean? And be aware of what it was, so it doesn't come and affect, especially now being a father. Like I don't want to put my shit onto my son, you know what I mean? And just create the same story over for him. And then he's got to grow up and go through his shit, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And we've learned it's very, very powerful, the generational. It can get passed on, and in that lineage, and it's for us to sort of make a stop or a stance, or we always want to grow from that. Joe Dispenza, he quotes the quantum realm all the time, and that past, present, and future are all connected. So it's not uncommon for someone to feel emotions long after, and that's why integration periods, it doesn't mean that integration is a 20-minute conversation straight after the breath work or after meditation practice. It can be, but it can go for years and years, because we've got things that are vented and stored in our subconscious that we don't even know of, and they're present. There's some things that we wouldn't even think we're aware of, but because everything is connected, and because we live through all these experiences, there are times where it can come up. And that's, for anyone listening, that's where it's really important to check in with yourself, because there's times where you can be great, there's times where you can't, you might not be great, but that's okay. That's the journey of life. We live in the present, but we do store quite a lot. So it's been that in itself for me has been a big learning experience, because I would think that, the past is the past, the present's the present, the future is the future. But when you realize that everything is connected and everything's there, that you've lived with it, it's quite powerful. And that's, as facilitators, that's what makes it special, that we can hold space and understand that and be there for people when things do come up, because sometimes they come up at the most strangest of times.
Well, mine was, I was literally driving home from work and then got a flashback memory. I had to pull over on the side of the road and sort of like come back to my breath, calm myself down, go, holy shit, I'm going to have to fucking deal with this.
Yeah.
Drive home and then, open up to my wife about what just happened, and she's been really supportive for that. So, but with level 2, like what Johanna says, it's like issues in our tissues, like the body does keep the score. What's that? Do you remember the author of that book?
I do not, but I remember the quote.
Yeah.
Definitely remember the quote.
Yeah. I've got the book at home. I haven't read that one. I've read Breath.
Yeah.
Breathe.
Breath. Yeah.
James Nestor. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one. But with going back to like level 1 training, like we were saying with the food before, you can have a bad day of like a blocked nose and it just sets your heart rate goes back up and your baseline scores, not the same anymore. So how have you found like food affecting your breathing or sleep? Because I know when you tape your mouth up, you wake up more hydrated, your heart rate's down. So like how is the breathwork journey, especially what we learn in level 1, more as coming down, sort of down regulation, how has that like affected you?
I think it's compounded into this last 6 months that we spoke about earlier with the health. I think doing the breath, doing the diet, doing the training, it's all now formed one big lifestyle. So what has happened for me is, by eliminating all these foods that were causing inflammation, and also by breathing properly, now I've got 2 things that were working against me only 2 years ago, and I wake up with such energy, such good energy. For example, I love reading. Now at night, usually I'd have to put a book down by 9:30 because it's getting late. I'm a night person, but I can't read. I can't take information past 9:30. But of late, I've been able to go to 11 o'clock if I want, still take really good information, because I've just got such clarity of mind. I go to sleep and I wake up perfectly. So like you did mention, more hydrated. It's amazing. I drink either mountain water or hydrogen water now, and along with proper breath work and also with proper diet, I only have to consume about 1.5-2 liters of water a day. Now, most people would say 2 liters is still a lot of water, but before, with the amount of training I do, because I sauna most days and I'm in jiu-jitsu and it's sweaty, I would have to drink 3 to 4 liters to get the same levels of hydration. So definitely more hydrated, less congested in conjunction with the diet. And also, less stomach issues, less issues in general, less headaches. I used to get quite a few headaches, and that would just be fatigue. And from time to time, I do have big days where I get them, but that's where I'll just calm down. I'll do a bit of a meditative practice, and I'll bring myself in, and I can generally self-cure and help myself in many occasions, and that's the power of it. I'm not looking for prescription medication. I'm not looking for other answers on why I'm feeling a certain way. I know that it just comes down to the basic things of sleep, breath, diet, exercise. What have I done in the last 24 hours? What do I need to do to counterbalance? So it's the whole approach.
What you've holistic. What you've just mentioned: sleep, diet, exercise, and then your cognitive function. That's Paul Chek's 4 doctors right there, which is Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happiness. So diet obviously speaks for itself, so does movement, exercise. Dr. Happiness, which is what you're thinking, which your food and exercise will affect your thinking. And then Dr. Quiet, so it's like your yoga, your meditation, your breathing practices, and your sleep as well.
Very, very big 4, very important.
He calls it the last 4 doctors you'll ever need.
And it's simple, isn't it? But I tend to do it as a human. You tend to overcomplicate things. You look for different answers. You're like, no, surely there's something better. The grass is greener on the other side. But if you bring it back to basics, and that's what I found originally with the breath when we met at the instructor camps, and now I'm finding it with the diet. If you just basics. I've been able, we spoke about dairy before. I've been going to local farms and getting milk from there, and just drinking it the way it is in its raw form,
So good.
and nothing, been fine.
Yeah.
You know, same with eggs, same with meat, like all these foods, you just keep it simple. And then going back to the breath, it's the same thing. Like, it's not hard to overcomplicate. And for people listening, it's just check in with your breath. Just be sitting there and be like, how am I breathing?
Yeah.
Let's just focus on my breath, focus on breathing in through the nose and out through the nose and calming myself. And that can be a subtle change, but that could be the change that someone may need, and that's all it takes.
That was the change I needed this morning after driving here.
Oh,
through that Sydney traffic, Jesus.
Very, very different, I gotta say. Compared to Melbourne, it is definitely worse. I gotta say, Sydney traffic is horrible. The roads are horrible, but look, we breathe, we get through it, we regulate ourselves, and we try not to get stuck in that fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us about after Breathless. So was there a few days between before you went and sat with ayahuasca, or?
I think there was only 1 or 2 days maximum in between, and I pretty much went straight to the camp. So it wasn't much time. It was literally, there was no integration points in between, because between Breathless, all we did was meditate and breath work, and we went on hikes, and that was a part of the experience. So for 3 weeks straight, I was doing something every day. And that ayahuasca experience was absolutely crazy. Blew my mind. I've since sat with the medicine quite a few times, but my lovely shaman, she's beautiful. She very experienced with the medicine, sings, lovely voice. But when I sat with it, like anything, like any experience, I always go, okay, what do I want out of it? So you set your intention. Then you make sure that you're in a good setting. You make sure that you're present in the experience, and then you have a really good integration. And it doesn't mean just with plant medicine. I'll do that if I'm going to the gym. What are you going to do in the gym today? Okay, let's be fully focused and present, and let's work on mind-muscle connection and make sure that we're lifting properly. And then how do we go after? What do we do for recovery? Integration. So
I love it.
It applies for everything. And so I went in with this ayahuasca. I wanted to essentially compound what I'd done at Breathless. I'd learnt all this new information, and doing the two at the same time, it was a lot. And I wanted to, like I said, define, I knew that there was a greater sense of purpose there when my essence started to change a little bit, and I wanted to dive deeper into that. So that was my intention going in. I was fully present and immersed. I did purge on one of the nights. It was 2 nights straight. I tend to do that, so I'm 50% of the time I will purge, and there's been a lot in me. It's a lot of the physical tension I'm holding as well, and afterwards it was just a great softening. Obviously there's visuals and things, and for me, I in this particular instant, I had the goddess of Aquarius come to me, which is like a mother figure, very feminine energy, which now, only a month ago, I've got tattooed on my leg. So she came to me, and I just felt such love and warmth. And often when we can connect with different entities, or we have the medicine, we don't know whether it's good or bad, but it's the intuition that tells us. We get a feeling inside. It's either like, oh, no, I don't like that, or yeah, it feels really warm. And for me, that ayahuasca ceremony was so warm. It was so powerful when I started thinking about breath, when I started thinking about the new health approach, about what I'm doing in my life. It was that mother figure, but it was just, yeah, this is it. This is the way to go. This is love. This is what you need to show people. And it was a profound experience that I can talk about for a long time, but yeah, really enjoyed it.
Well, that's what people say it is. I've never experienced ayahuasca, just the San Pedro and the mushrooms. But yeah, they always talk about it being a real feminine energy, and then the cactus is like the grandfather.
Yes.
And then mushrooms are like alien.
Mushrooms are different altogether. I've been privileged enough to do all three, and DMT as well, and many different things. And I think there's a time and place for everyone to do it. I think it's really special if you can be held and do that in a particular setting. Obviously, there's a lot of taboo around the topic, but it does so much for so many people. And you can really, again, if you get that intention right, and you go in there with a purpose, which most people do. Most people are really good at doing that, because if you're going to take the step up to do that, you're going to have some idea about where you want to go. And I found it so profound. And like you said, you do go through some dark times with ayahuasca. You'll hear a lot of reports where people go through their journeys, and it's like they're climbing up the mountain, and things are really hard, really hard, really hard, and then all of a sudden they have to break through, and then once they break through, it's like the hardest part of the time of their life, and then they break through, and then it's like total bliss.
Yeah.
I was the opposite. It was really interesting. So I was blissland. So that warm feeling, it was so good. Probably I had no sense of time, but probably for the first half of the ceremony, it was so good. And then all of a sudden, it was like a dark storm. It showed me all the things that I needed to change in my life. But it's like it put anything that I had done wrong in my life, anything that my consciously I didn't agree with internally, it's like it brought it to the surface, and all the emotions, all the negative emotions hit me at one time, and it was dark, it was gloomy, I really hated it being there. It's like, yeah, everything went stormy, and then I purged. But it's funny, when you do plant medicine, I'm a big believer that there's no thing as a bad trip. There's no thing as a bad trip. I've had bad trips, but when you learn how to integrate, or if you are well facilitated, there are always lessons, and there's always reasons why things come up. So for me, that was, yeah, a massive part in my whole process, and it capped off the whole breathless experience perfectly.
Yeah, nice. Who's to say what's good or bad, eh?
Exactly. Yeah, it's up to the individual, really.
Yeah.
It needs to come from them.
And that's why I thought it was really, I'm not sure if you heard my story, but that's why back in episode number 1, if you haven't heard it yet, go back and listen to that, where I shared my psychedelic trauma, because like you said, how important it is to set that intention, have the set and setting, a very safe space, have a sitter or a shaman or a medicine person there with you, which is what I didn't do. I was just honouring a friend that wanted to get high. I had plenty of experience myself, but he did not. And I just threw him in the deep end, and yeah, shit hit the fan. And yeah, I still have nothing against psychedelics. I still take them. I still see it in ceremony. But yeah, just raising that awareness is because you always hear, like lately, people talking about the benefits of plant medicine and that everyone should do them. And I just wanted to share my story, because not to try scare anyone, but just so anyone that's thinking about doing, go and do it properly. Do it with the intention. Do it with someone who's experienced. Don't just grab the medicine and go out and just try and have the experience yourself. So yeah, that's why I thought it was really important for me to share what I shared, as much as I didn't really want to, but I've got to lay the cards on the table. And like Johannes said, if you want someone else to share, like yourself on my podcast, then I've got to share first.
Yeah. It's very important that it does resonate with me. I had the best man that is about to be at my wedding, Rob. We've known each other for many years, and he wanted to do mushrooms, and he asked me for a bit of guidance. And it's a tricky spot, because he wanted to do mushrooms in a party setting with people that I knew wasn't the right crowd. And I go, as a facilitator, you sometimes second guess yourself. Not a facilitator of medicine, but with someone with more enhanced knowledge. You've got the presence there to really guide someone. And I was stuck in two minds, because part of me was like, well, I shouldn't be recommending this. This is not good. But the other part of me was, well, he's an adult. I can't influence his life. He needs to make his own choices. So I went with the approach of saying, yes, you can do it if you want, but I would not recommend it. This is not the right setting. But if you want to do it, you're a free soul. And he did it, and he had a terrible experience. And he's now quite traumatized from mushrooms. And it saddens me, because mushrooms are not like that. They're very calming. They're very nurturing. And now he's going to have some trauma that he's going to have to work through. And he's now taken a few steps back in his perception and what he now sees. So it is that fine balance. It's not, I would never blame the substance. I would never blame the instructor for breath work. I would never blame your health coach. It always comes from within. We need to make the right informed decisions, put really good people around you that can help you make those decisions, and then, yeah, like you said, make sure that the intention is there and that the setting is there. But we have experiences and we learn, and as tough as they are, I'm sure you've learnt a lesson or two from your experience, and I'm sure my friend will learn a lesson or two, and that's how life works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been, I'm still unpacking that big journey, because I actually got to finish. My friend, the police rocked up and had to knock him out and take him to hospital, so he didn't really get to finish what he was sitting with.
Mm.
Whereas I went out looking for him because he ended up leaving the property and running away, and I went looking for him, but then the mushrooms were still coming on, so I had to go and find a place that was safe for me, which was down near this creek before I got lost because it was still coming on. I was starting to get disorientated about where exactly I was, so I knew this spot, went and sat there and finished my medicine, which was beautiful experience. And what actually happened was a lot of sexual shame came up from my childhood that I've been wanting to admit and tell Kira for years, and I felt too much shame that she's like gonna judge me and gonna leave me if I tell her this. And then the very next day I told her, and she just bawled her eyes out. She shared something that she'd been holding in, and it was like we just connected so much deeper. And then ever since then, now our communication is like on point. Like we don't really hold much behind anymore. If something's bothering us, if we have a little argument, it's like it's over like that, and we're resolving it. And have that journey to thank for that. You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about your breathwork story.
Ooh, the story.
How did you find breath? Because I remember you talking about jiu-jitsu just before, of remaining calm, having to come back to your breath. And it just kind of reminded me of how you found your breathwork journey.
Yeah, right. So this story, prior to Breathless, I told, 28 or 30 or however many we were, maybe 20 of us at the master's course. But prior to that, I'd maybe only told no more than a dozen people, and half of them were very close friends, and obviously my family knew, and the other half, I was running a youth camp where I had a group of male boys, teenagers, and I hit them with that story, and their perspective changed a lot because there was a bit of alcohol involved in this story, and I wanted to really give them my perspective on things. But at Breathless, I was a bit 50-50 on whether to share it, to be honest. And at the instructor one, I shared a different story. I didn't share that story. I shared another story which was a bit more lighthearted and fun. And I've been very blessed in my life, not to go off topic, but I've been very fortunate. You mentioned that just before that you were driving the other day and something came up. Not that I'm aware of to this point, but I haven't had any major things come up for me other than this one story. And that was what I ran with at Breathless when I met everyone for the first time. I said, hey, look, I'm not going to sit here and make something up. I've lived a very fortunate life. I've gone to a really good school, really good family. I've had everything go my way. Yes, you have to create your own luck, but I am blessed in what I've been through. And that was my approach. That was my story. It was just talking about, that I've been lucky enough to be put in this position on earth, and I want to share that love to others. It wasn't that I had to overcome this or overcome that. But then instructor two, obviously, we got to know each other on a deeper level. There's more meditation, there's more work, there's a lot more to it, as you would know, and I felt really connected. So we were there, I believe we were under the trees, we were lying down, and I just ripped it out. So the first time I actually discovered breathwork, I had no idea what I was doing. How old would I have been? I would have been 18 or 19. It would have been back in 2015, 2016. And it's when I was in Cambodia. So I studied at uni. I studied exercise sports science. I originally wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. So I was doing cadavers at Melbourne Uni, all that cool stuff, and biochemistry and biology. And part of our exchange program was to go to a third world country and go and work in the hospitals at night. And during the day, we'd go and teach health education in the schools. So for those that are familiar with Cambodia, we went to a place called Battambang. And then we went to another place called Siem Reap, which is more popular. It's sort of near Angkor Wat, where the temples are. And we were there for a 3.5-4 week period. So we went, and there was maybe 12 of us with the 2 guides that we went with, and then we had a translator on the group, and another guy named Ryan, who was from England at the time, that met us there. So it was about 15 of us, and we worked. So in the nights we worked, and Aaron, can I tell you, the way the conditions are there, we are so fortunate in this country. I know individuals like to, including myself, bag government, bag this, blame this person, blame that person, but you got to really stop and realize how fortunate we are. I was seeing, you've been fortunate now to have a lovely child, lovely little boy. I was seeing childbirths happen in conditions where it was dirty, there was no safety, unbelievable, just on the side of the road. It was incredible what I saw. And we were there, and by then I was 2 years into uni, and at 2 years into uni, trying to get into medicine, we had the same experience as the doctors there. It was unbelievable, the level of education difference. So we came in and we did vaccination programs, and yeah, we were a lot of education. We learnt a lot. We were teaching a lot as well. So we were still studying whilst we were there, and we were meeting up with the doctors, and some of the doctors didn't know the stuff we were studying. We were 2-year uni students, and they're the doctors there. So that's what we went there for. And then the story really begins when there was a long weekend, and we were in Battambang, which is in a more poor area, and we wanted to go for the long weekend to Siem Reap. And Siem Reap is like the city, so it's like going from the country to, hey, we're in Sydney. And we went there, and it was going to be a 3-day event. And of course, everyone wanted to drink, have a good time. Siem Reap, you can party there. You know, there's a lot of tourists that go there. Similar to sort of Bali, when people go to Bali. I've never been, but I've heard a lot of stories. And that's where there was a place in Siem Reap, a strip where everyone went to. At the time, I wasn't a big drinker. Never really drank alcohol. I was very disciplined. I was into the footy and the running. At the time, and then I was going into the bodybuilding. So it was like, you know, my body is my temple. I don't drink. And the night started off. We're out. Had the long weekend. We were there the whole week. You know, we'd worked hard, so everyone wanted to let their hair down, so to speak, and everyone started drinking. I kept to myself. I just ate, you know, dinner. The night went on, and we went to a rooftop bar, and that's really where things began. And I remember there was a young Cambodian guy running the bar. He would have been 23, 24 at the time. And it was the most crazy place I'd been to. Like, people just recklessly just drinking as much as they can. Drinks are cheap. They're very cheap. They had the one thing I remember, they had a massive blackboard up. It was a leadership board, and they had all the countries there. And for each shot you had, you got a point for your country. And at the end of the month, everyone that was signed up to that country would receive a gift pack. They would send out a gift pack to your home. So you had all these countries going at it. Australia, mind you, were by far the best country. The Aussies were killing it. And I believe this landed on Australia Day, if I can recall correctly. So, yeah, it was an incredible experience just to be there and witness how people were living and partying, because that wasn't me. I had no association with that world. And all, you know, the people I was with were like, okay, you going to drink? You're not going to drink? And I'm like, no. Not for me. Until we went downstairs. So what happened is at midnight, the club, the bar that we were at shut off. And I remember the guy that was working behind the bar, he gets like this big stereo, he puts it on his shoulder, and he's like, all right, everyone, we're going down to the streets. Everyone follow me. Let's go. And everyone, like 150 people, just start marching down the street. There's clubs on either side. There's tuk-tuk drivers, which are like little taxis. And they're coming out, and they're bringing us trays of alcohol, like 60 shots. And at this point in time, I was like, come on, you got to drink. They're just coming from everywhere. So that's when I started drinking. And I had a shot. Before I knew it, I had probably 4 or 5 shots in the space of 20 seconds. And then there was carts on the street, like, you know, sort of hot dog carts that you see in the US, but they were alcohol carts, and you can go and get 3-litre buckets of alcohol for $10 Australian. And I'm telling you, the stuff they use is not pure alcohol for that price, and it was very potent. I remember I got a Long Island iced tea, it was very strong. We went into a club and we start drinking the Long Island. Drank that. Probably an hour and a half later, I was starting to feel affected. I'd gone back outside and got another cocktail and brought it inside, and this is where the night started to change. As I was drinking, I started to feel disassociated from my body. Again, I'm someone that doesn't drink much, but over time I've actually realized I've got a very, very high tolerance. So the point is not from an egotistic point of view, but to that point I'd had a lot of alcohol, way too much. And that's where, when I went to the youth camps, this was my lesson on education about the dangers of alcohol and what it can lead to. So that's how the story went with them. But whilst I was in there was a security guard that pulled me up and said, hey, you can't drink that inside, you need to leave. It's a bit like if you walked into a club with your own alcohol, they'll kick you out. You got to buy the alcohol in the club. It was the same thing that applied here. Yeah. So I got kicked out, and at this point in time, all my friends were inside, and I was feeling a little bit, oh God, I don't feel too good. And I had 2 tuk-tuk drivers that came out of nowhere, and They sort of ushered me, one on each side, and they said, "Yeah, you're okay. You've had a bit to drink. Come with us." Now, prior to going to Cambodia, I remember when we got picked up at the airport on a shuttle bus and going to our destination. We were told by our two guides that met us in Cambodia. They said, careful going to any of the big cities and partying, because in this country they will try and kidnap you and take you for your organs, because they make an average wage of $20 to $30 Australian a month, if best, and an organ can sell for $800. So they're making bang for buck. And you're on a shuttle bus, you're there, you're excited, you're going to help the kids. You sort of goes through one ear out the other. But then at this point in time, I've been raised really well, and I remember what my parents always said: be careful of strangers, be careful when you're drinking out in public. And I didn't have a reason to doubt these people, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, why they pick me to usher me? And we went, so you can imagine like a big long street, and we went up the street, and imagine like into an alleyway, like about 250 meters from the street. And they brought me down this alleyway, and then there was all these like cafe style tables, like those tables that sit 4 people. And there was lights, and I'm like, and then there was 2 strangers as well eating. It looked like a chicken parma or something at the time, and they just sat me down, and I'm like, oh no, this is okay. They just sat me down, and they sort of just gave me a pat on the back and walked away. And I was there with my big 3-liter thing of alcohol with a straw, and I'm like, oh, do I just ditch the alcohol or do I go back in? And this comes with immaturity at the time. I was like, no, I don't want to waste my money, and I'm like, it's probably like $7 worth of alcohol in there, so I'm like, I'll finish it. And I started drinking, and then all of a sudden, a really attractive Cambodian female came out of nowhere and sat opposite me on this table. And she smiled, and she asked, what was your name? And I'm thinking, this is really strange. Is she just walking by? Is she with friends? And we started talking, and she was first asking questions. What are you doing here in Cambodia? Oh, you're helping the kids. You're working in the hospital. That's so nice. Tell me about your study. But then as the conversation went on, she moved from opposite me to then the side of me. She was at a right angle, and she started saying things like, oh, what are you drinking? Let's get some more drinks. Would you want to come to my apartment? I had a girlfriend at the time, not my fiance, an ex-partner, and I was thinking, no, don't go back with anyone. Oh, I've got a girlfriend, but you just don't do that. And then all of a sudden, she sat on top of me, and you might be thinking, how does this happen? I was getting very intoxicated. The alcohol had by far hit my system, and I was very delayed in my response, and she just sat on my lap. And again, I'm thinking, what is this? What's going on? But I'm like, she's not harming me. She's sitting on my lap. And then she goes, I'm going to get us some drinks. I said, I don't want drinks. Out of nowhere, a tray comes with 2 shots of alcohol, and they get put in front, and she was going, okay, baby, let's have a drink together. And I didn't pick up the shot glass. Then she would try and pick up the shot glass and put it in my mouth and act cute and give me a kiss on the cheek and say, here, drink it. And I'd say, no, I do not want it. And this went on for probably 15, 20 minutes constantly. Her joking around, playing cute. And then there was a moment where everything changed dramatically. And it really scares me when I think about it. And I'm even getting emotional talking about it, because the vision is so imprinted in my mind. It's unbelievable. There was a point in time where I was drinking out of my straw in my 3-liter glass, and if you can imagine, I'm just sitting there sipping away, and I look over to her, and she looks at me, and she goes, come on, let's share this drink together. And what happened was, I put my straw, or she put her straw in my drink as I was drinking it. So I'm drinking away, and she thought that she could fool me by grabbing the straw and putting it in the shot glass, thinking that I'd continuously try and drink. And I stopped immediately. I spat the straw out. She thought that I was too intoxicated to realize. And the vision in my head, if I was an artist, I tell you, Aaron, I could paint it so perfectly. She tilted her head and she goes, what's the matter, baby? Something along those lines. And I said, I'm not fucking stupid. You have drugged this. I just let it out. And in that moment, she looked at me and she had a queer little smirk. It was like, huh. And as soon as she did that, those 2 guys, they brought me back. They put like a big sack over my head. It was laced. One of them got me in a headlock. It wasn't doing jiu-jitsu at the time, mind you. It would have come in handy, but I was very intoxicated. They dragged me off the chair and they were strangling me. One of them was on top of me, the other one had the bag. I could smell the fumes in the bag. I was trying to get it off, and I would have passed out for at least, I don't know, I can't even tell you. My memory is off. But what the next thing I remember is I'm there on the floor, chair's knocked over. The bag was half of my head, and I've sort of lifted my eyes up, and I'm starting to feel really faint. I'm feeling my legs, and my legs are numb, and I'm like, oh my god. I look to the end of the alleyway, and there's a white van that's open with the doors, and they're sort of sitting there. They've got their leg up on the van, and they're having a smoke, and it's the two guys and the girl, and they're looking over at me and going, you can see they're laughing. I then look to the other side, and there's those two guys there, and they looked Western. They were white guys. I could tell they could speak English from before, and they're just eating. And I called out to them, and I said, help, help, I think I've been drugged. And they just looked over at me and just continued eating like nothing was happening. In my mind, I thought they're in on it as well. There's something, they're in on it, they're not helping me. There's no way that they wouldn't help me in this state. And then occurred to me another thing that they said on the bus. So I did mention that they try and take organs and things, and obviously that was a thought that went through my head. But they mentioned that they will not try and take you unless you're fully unconscious, because Westerners tend to be bigger than the people there in Cambodia, and they don't want to try and fight you while you're still alert. So that went through my head, and what that meant was I had a chance. And this is where the breath comes in. And at the time, I didn't know breath work. I was very, very quickly about to pass out. I could feel the drugs in my system, and I can elaborate what they gave me later. But I knew that for me to survive and not end up as a dead body, I would need to get out of the alleyway, go back down the street I came, which was probably 25 metres alleyway, 250 metres down the street, make it to the clubs where all the street lights are and where all the people were partying, and I'd be safe. So I thought, with every inch of energy, I need to move, and the way I'm going to move is I need to breathe, because if I stop breathing, I can pass out. And if I pass out, I'm done. I thought about, Channel 9, Channel 10, when you see it on the news, I'm like, are they going to say that an Australian boy has ended up dead in Cambodia? How are my parents going to know? Everything went before me. I'm like, this is it. So I tried to stand up, and I collapsed. My legs were completely numb. Tried to stand up again, collapsed, and I thought, I'm going to have to commando crawl this. I was a very, very determined individual. I still am. That's one of the attributes, if you ask anyone that knows me, my determination and my grit to get things done is second to none, and I resonate with this moment in my life that has made me who I am and has formed part of my personality. So I started commando crawling. When I got to the main street, there was still about 150, 200 meters before there was street lights, so it was still dark, and they were probably maybe 100, 150 meters away. So it was like 150 each way. I was in the middle, and they started looking. I looked back, and they were looking at me laughing, as if, look at him, he's crawling, he's going to just pass out. One of them tapped the other one on the shoulder, because I'm sort of half looking, half going, because I had to monitor where they were. One of them tapped him on the shoulder and was like, go and get him. And he starts walking towards me. And I'm like, oh shit, if I do not walk, I'm done. He will walk faster than I can commando crawl. It was a big brick wall, though, that I had to get up. So I tried to scale the wall. I'm putting my hands up. My legs are absolutely numb. Like, I'm dragging my legs. There is no movement. And I could feel whatever they had given me was moving from my feet up my body. And I started to become more numb around my stomach. And I'm like, oh my God, if I lose function of my arms that are going to drag me against this wall. So I started using the breath. I took big breaths, deep in and out. And on the third breath, it was like, 1, 2, 3, and I pulled myself up. My legs were limp, but I had my upper body connected to the wall. And I started using the wall and pushing my legs and dragging my legs. And as I was doing that, he began to move at a faster pace. And this was a race. This was 100 meters that way, 100 meters this way. I made sure that my breath was deep. It wasn't a shallow breath. So this is where the belly breathing comes in, which I had no idea at the time. Because when you're in those moments and it's that you're in fight or flight, I was going to die. And it wasn't just let's breathe. It was big breaths, as deep as I could get them because I had to stay conscious and I had to get the air in because I didn't know what was happening to my body. I managed to get through that 100 meters, and as I reached the street lights, I looked back and they were cursing at each other, and I could see them swearing. One of them threw a cigarette packet or something down. The woman walked off annoyed, and I'm like, I at that point I collapsed back down. I was in street lights, there was people around, and I started commando crawling. It was probably 60, 70 meters, give or take, back to the club. No one saw me, everyone's partying. I commando crawled on the ground through to the club, and I had one of my mates that was dancing like an idiot on top of one of the bar tables, drunk as anything. And with every ounce of energy I had left, I lifted up on one arm like as if I was going to do a push-up, and then slapped his legs from underneath him and just screamed, "Fucking help me." And I passed out. That was it. I was blacked out then. That was the last bit of energy. And then I woke up, 6 hours later in my hotel room, strapped down, all 15 of the people that I knew around me. I was very angry. The drugs had reacted with the alcohol in my system. It had caused a very bad reaction. They had stolen my wallet, which I wasn't too concerned about, but my friend who didn't know my family called home, my brother and my mum and dad. My brother picked up the phone. It was Sunday night, public holiday there, and it was a Monday morning at 7 a.m. in Australia, and my brother picked up the phone, and all he heard was a random guy that he didn't know was, "Hey, your brother's okay, but cancel his bank details." And that's all they got, and they knew that something was going wrong. And then they didn't hear from me until the Tuesday night Australian time, so they went a day and a half where it's like, what the hell's happening? Someone's talking about Fernando's bank details and we can't get hold of Fernando. I ended up being sedated because I was too aggressive. Everything was reacting with me. There was problems with my heart.
You sedated in hospital, sorry, as well?
Before I had to go to hospital. They were transporting me, and I'm ashamed of this, but I didn't know what I was doing, man. They had me handcuffed the whole time because I was that aggressive. I was going off, not because of what happened, just the way I was feeling, the chemical imbalances. And then I remember the doctor or the nurse said, "Okay, we're going to let you out. We're going to bring you into hospital. Can we uncuff you? Are you going to be okay?" And I said, yeah. And they uncuffed my feet, and then they went to uncuff one of my hands. And when they did, I stood up and punched them. And the police officers there, they put me straight back down, handcuffed me. They sedated me on the floor in the entrance of the hospital. And then I woke up 2 days later with only two of the people around me. And the doctor there said, "You've been severely drugged. We're still trying to work out what's happened. Your system's not functioning properly." My serotonin was gone. And also I had problems with my thyroid. And they said, "You need to get back to Australia." And I remember being so embarrassed in that moment. I couldn't get up to go to the toilet. I was completely bedridden. I had the girls that I was with that I'd only known for the last 3-4 weeks. They had to help me urinate. And I just felt ashamed. And that's a part of it as well. It wasn't a shame because of what had happened. It was a shame with the alcohol that I wasn't like that. And it really cut me that I put myself in that position. And anyway, I got flown back to Melbourne, and I saw my doctors. I went to hospital, stayed in hospital for a few days, and I was told that my thyroid would never work again. I destroyed my thyroid. They'd given me a horse tranquilizer, along with a concoction of other drugs, the date rape drug and a few things, and mixed with the alcohol and what they put in the alcohol over there, it just exploded my whole system. My thyroid was down, my blood pressure was severely low, nothing was working, and then I had to work extremely hard to get my thyroid back. It took 2 years after, which they never thought it would come back, and that was the story. But at the time I never knew about the breath. It was just, it's so innate, isn't it? Like, we all breathe, and we know when we need to take deep breaths. Our body tries to prevent us if we go in cold water. So the breath does its own thing, and on this occasion I knew I had to belly breathe. I had to take deep breaths and use my diaphragm to expand, to keep alert, to stay alive. And that's what kept me alive. And I only realized that a few years ago when I started doing breath work. I'm like, oh shit, that was diaphragmatic breathing. That was massive. That saved me. So that's my breathwork story. So at the time I never knew. So yeah.
Man, that is crazy, dude. And that was a few years before the breathwork journey as well, like that you started with
Yeah,
Breathless.
so that would have been 2016 and Breathless was 2022.
So were you doing yoga at all, or has yoga sort of come in with the breath as well?
No, that's come in with the breath. When I met my fiance in 2017, she was big on yoga and Pilates. And to be honest, at the time, like, nah, that's bullshit. I was a big bodybuilder at the time in terms of like big personality. You know, I'm not doing that. Yoga, Pilates, that's rubbish. Spiritual, that was me. So it was always in my life through my fiance, but it wasn't until probably 2021, 2022. Where, especially during the COVID years, you know, you have to find yourself a little bit and you've got a lot of time to think. And I started to change. I incorporated the breath work and I've done a complete 360 now. And I've started to realize, as we do we've mentioned trauma before, but positive events, negative events, it's all connected. And over the last few years, I've started to realize, oh wow, like this thing called the breath, it's come in handy at a few points in time. And that is by far the biggest moment in my life, and one that I'll never forget, where it did save me.
That's insane. And it's funny how you said that it was intuitive to stay awake, just to keep doing those belly breathings, to stay alert, to stay awake so you didn't pass out. And that just reminded me of me when I was younger. I actually get car sick a lot, and just intuitively I would hum, but big long exhale hums, just going and it would get rid of my car sickness. And then now I still do it because I realise that that's actually calming my vagus nerve.
Yeah. Increases the nitric oxide as
Yeah.
well, and,
Yeah.
and it helps with all of that. It's
Yeah.
beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned your fiance. Dude, you got getting married in what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, a month from now. So
Wow.
in March this year. So a
Exciting
little bit
times.
more than a month. Yes, that's why it brought us to Sydney. We met our celebrant who's from the breathwork community as well. And all these things, breathwork, meditation, yoga, ice baths, community, sense of community. So met the lovely Daniela, so came to sign the papers. But yes, Holly and I met in the bodybuilding world in 2017. But it's so amazing. We've both been on such a growth journey that we haven't... we still train, but we don't stay as a bodybuilding couple as some people would see us. So we met backstage at a bodybuilding show, and the rest is history. And now we've been on quite a beautiful path together over the last nearly 7 years.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. We'll wrap it up in a minute, but do you want to just share how you proposed? Because I think that's so beautiful, dude.
Yes. So quickly, again, the breath comes into it. It was a cold winter's morning in Melbourne. Melbourne mornings can be horrible. And I go to a cold and conscious community. So we do breath work, ice, and at the time I wasn't facilitating. I've since facilitated. But at the time you go there, you do breath work, you do a connection piece, and then you jump into the ice. So we get like the inflatable tubs, we get the seawater and put ice in there. And it was only 2 days after we were going on a really nice trip to Fiji. And people around me knew I was going to propose, and you think, okay, romantic location in Fiji. I'm like, nah, I'm going to do something completely off left center. And for anyone that's done breath work, you know that feeling of the euphoric feeling when you finish breath work and you feel amazing. I'm like, I'm going to hit it when she finishes the breath work. So I put so much planning into it because we have Tibetan Mastiff dogs. For those listening, search what a Tibetan Mastiff dog is. We have 3 of them. Holly loves our male. I'm like, he needs to be a part of giving the ring. So we had to leave early in the morning at 5:45 in the morning on a Sunday morning, but I couldn't bring the dogs because it would be like, oh, what's going on? Plus, I thought ahead. I'm like, she's going to want to wear makeup. So we pretended that there was a photo shoot at the event and everyone had to get dressed up. And what we had organised was that my brother was coming to my house. He was coming to do the breath work, but he would sleep in past the alarm. I would get annoyed. We fight all the time as brothers. So Holly was like, oh, he's just annoyed with his brother. We're leaving him behind. But he took the dog 5 minutes after so he could bring Tobias. And what happened was we sat in the circle. Everyone knew beforehand. We purposely ran 5 minutes late so the instructors could tell everyone what was happening. Everyone finished their breathwork session and they went through their flow, but the instructor continued to do the breathwork for 5 minutes, and Holly, we were lying in a circle. Holly and the 2 people next to her continued to do the breathwork. They were in on it, but if everyone got up and left, maybe she would feel different energetically. So everyone gets up and they're still doing the breathwork. At that time, we set up the big sign, "Will you marry me?" We put balloons, we put flowers, we had the little what do you call them? Those little cameras in the sky going, and then we had the dog. I tied the necklace and the ring around the dog. So then she finishes the breath work, and the instructor's like, "Okay, sit up." And she sits up. She's just finished her breathwork practice, and Tobias is there and there's a box around his neck, and she didn't realize at first. She was just like, she's just finished breath work. She's like, oh my God, what's happening? Tobias, is this real? Is it not real? And then she looks up, will you marry me? And bang, it hit her. And it was just such a perfect moment. And then in crazy fashion at 7 a.m. on a very cold winter's morning, we jumped in the ice. There was rose petals in there, so that was like our spa, and we did a 3 or 5 minute ice bath, and it was freezing cold, and we shared a special moment in there, and everyone was around helping facilitate, and that's how I proposed.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah,
it's like so much growth too to look forward to, even in that proposal. Like, you've already done so much journeying together, and then to propose like that, it's like, what's next for you guys, you know what I mean?
And it really signified the new chapter of our life. It was very, very special for that to happen, and that was a year and a half ago that we did that, and from that point on we've really grown spiritually and energetically together. And it was a time, not just because we got that I proposed and we got engaged, but it was a time of new beginnings for us.
Bro, let's leave it there.
Let's leave it there. I love it.
It's a little cherry on top.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been awesome.
Oh, it's good to see you, man. It's been a long time, over a year now. So, I'll have to come down Melbourne next time and check out this new pad you've been talking about.
Yeah, come down. Anyone that's welcome. Anyone that is in Aaron's circle, come down. If you're in Melbourne, I'll pick you up. And what's on for you? What's the next podcast involve, and what does it look like your year?
My year is I'm working on a program for Breath for Performance. That's what I'm doing at the moment, and looking at doing a few videos and some events with Chris Sulphur, who also does the editing for all the podcasts, and then just focusing a lot on the podcast this year. That's where, because being out in the country, it's really hard to crack there's a lot of coal mines around, and it's that coal mining sort of mentality. I've tried to put a few events on there, and it's just no shows. So it's a hard community to crack, and I think if I can reach people through the podcast, then it might build something a little bit easier up there, because there's a few people in the sauna at the gym there that are into it, but it's a hard community, so just trying to come at a different approach and see how that goes. But it's more so for me as well. It's a bit egotistical, or scratching my own back, I guess, is all these conversations, like, they've helped me so much, and I just want to provide that for other people as well, be of service to other people, to kind of get the message out of how breath work, meditation, yoga, diet, movement, and medicines as well has helped my life and my journey. And I want to share that because so many of my friends have just been struggling over the years, and I just want to be able to provide something without trying to force it down their throat. Just have it there, and if they want to listen, they can listen and learn, but if not, then that's okay as well. Through contribution we gain the ultimate fulfillment, so very, very valid. It's beautiful. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate being part of your show. Wicked, man. I'll speak to you soon. Done, man.